for review and approval.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
This is Tom. Just curious, Paige, if we wind up doing all the projects that we have listed for 2022, are they all covered in our budget, or how does that compare to what we expected to spend, the total?
Yes, let me grab that exact number for you really quick. This year's capital budget was just over $5 million, so there's plenty of capital budget capacity to do all of these projects, as well as the significant revenues to cover all of them. We'll still be in a good position even after doing all of these projects. I do have a slide further down that goes through where I project we'll end up if council does approve these projects.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councilman?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Continuing along then.
Vice Mayor.
Oh, Mr. Vice Mayor, yes.
Yes, thank you. Paige, this is Jackie Robinson field drainage. There's a connection to the greens at the north end of the field that is on the greens, and there is a drainage channel onto the golf course at the south end of the field. What's the problem? What are we trying to fix? And where's the water going? It's not going into the greens, is it?
No, Mr. Vice Mayor, there's actually a little bit of drainage that comes out of the greens onto our property. And there's an easement for that. And it was actually, if I remember right, it was dealt with. Well, I don't know originally how it came to be, but there is an easement for, I think, about 4 CFS during a 100-year storm to come onto our property. And we need to be able to move that down to the retention basin. That's what this project is about.
Does that come contiguous to the Camelback alignment, or does it come in from the south somewhere?
No, it's coming out of that area. If you're familiar with the greens, you know that there's a road that runs along kind of parallel to Camelback Road, where that where that road approaches our property and turns to the south. There's a drainage basin there, and some of that road and some of the area around that road drains into that basin and then goes through the wall and comes onto our property.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And you know, just speculation. I think back when this was done, one developer owned all of that property and didn't see a problem with it.
Yeah, and it was like it might have been intended to possibly be a road or a connecting point at some point also, or a walkthrough or something, but it's no longer going to be that.
Other questions on 22 projects before we move into 23 projects? Okay. Now we're going to get into fiscal year 23 staff recommended general fund projects. The first one, of course, is Litchfield Square. Cost estimate is $3.4 million. This has a 5, of course. 3.5 is the remaining balance of the initial 5 set aside. We will need additional funds after that to complete the project, but there will be other revenues such as parcel sales. Scout Park improvements, $1 million. We gave that a 4. That could include a facility and Scout Park improvements. Curb and gutter on Litchfield Road from Indian School to Camelback, $1 million. We gave that a 4. Timing depends on completion of the southwest gas main. Camelback Park view fence construction, $800,000. We gave that a 3. That's the perimeter wall around the north and east sides of Camelback Park. On an earlier slide, you saw the design. This is the actual construction. Perimeter wall reconstruction, the Dysart Road north half, $60,000. Gave that a 2. Complete design for construction in a later year. We have multiple slides of 23 projects. Any questions on any of these 5?
Matthew, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just recently I was driving down Villanueva. So the Camelback Park wall, that little tiny skinny piece that is in between the last home and and the park, is that going to be walled off in a tall spot? I mean, right now, I never paid attention to that. Is that included in the wall construction?
Yes,
Like you
ma'am.
can step over it right now, right?
Right.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we call that the pony wall. We would be replacing that part and hopefully moving it out. That was part of the wall redesign.
Okay, so that one's included in this. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Other questions on these 5? Okay.
Actually, one question. Have we decided that we're going to do a view fence at Camelback Park?
Good point.
Go ahead, Woody.
Well, I was just going to say that we are trying to work the planning of the parking lot for Camelback Park together with the wall design. And I'm waiting for one of our on-call engineers to give us a design for the parking lot that utilizes a greener approach, and that instead of asphalt, we would use grass block. And I won't get into all the details, but when we get that ready here in the next couple of weeks, then we'll take it to the RPG Commission so that we can work with them kind of holistically on the wall and the parking lot at the same time. And one of the aspects of the wall then would be what part might be view fence and what part might be solid.
I would definitely like to have them consider either some portion of that fence being a view fence, or maybe some portions being view fence mixed in with a solid wall, because that solid wall at that height for that length is going to be really it's going to be like, I feel like I'm in Berlin.
Yes, that's definitely a consideration, and we will present to them a couple of options that they might consider, but of course, leave it up to them at the end. And the project will come back to the council for approval before we start construction.
Make sure when you take it to them, you give them, and you give the council when you bring it to us, some more sophisticated perspective views of what that wall is going to look like, so that you stand down by where the houses are now on the west side, as far west as you can go, and you look east, what it's going to be like. And the same thing looking either north or south along Dysart, so we get some idea of what we're considering building.
Okay, we'll do that.
Councilman Romack.
You're muted, sir.
Turn on your mic, Councilman Romack.
Okay, how about now?
Yes,
Good.
sir.
All right, good. That wall was actually a floodwater diversion from the water that comes off of property to the north side of Camelback. And anyway, we had some problems back in the 1980s, 79, 81, somewhere in there. But having said that, the park over at Turtle Park, where they did the view fence along with the regular masonry fence, I think is really well done, attractive. It's a good design, and I would strongly encourage that we continue that look, Woody.
Thank you, Councilmember Romack. We'll definitely make those comments to the RPG.
Thank you.
Any other questions on these 5? Okay. Continuing, road reconstruction, Dysart and Indian School. Woody was talking about this before, to replace the failing pavement in front of Albertsons. $600,000. That's a 5, just because the condition that it's in. Next one is Camelback Road Engineering. That's $400,000. We gave that a 3. That's to prepare the plans for the ultimate widening of Camelback from Goodyear to Litchfield Road. Citywide road program, the general fund portion of this, $310,000. We gave that a 5. This is in addition to the HERF citywide road program, because our HERF revenues are not enough to support the entire road program. So we would be effectively subsidizing some road repair from general funds just because there aren't enough HERF funds for the work, the road work that needs to be done. Street sweeper replacement, $250,000. We gave this a 5. Our current sweeper is declining. We are seeking grant funds, but if we don't get those grant funds, we would need to get one otherwise.
Mr. City Manager, have you talked
sir.
to Eric Anderson directly about getting into that program? Because that's where we've gotten our street sweepers in the past, is through MAG.
It was a MAG grant. Richard, are you on the call with us on that?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Can you speak to the mayor's question on that, Richard?
Yes, so I didn't speak directly with Eric, who you're referring to, but it is part of that MAG grant funding program.
Good.
The last update that I got is that our application has been, is in review, and we are, I guess, towards the end or the back end of all that funding that's available. So that was the last update I got from MAG.
Mayor, we can certainly reach out to Eric.
Yeah, I would suggest that you reach out, Mr. City Manager, and just let them know how important it is to Litchfield to, we're a small city and this is a very big capital item for us. And it's important to the countywide dust control process, so.
Be glad to. Thank you, Richard.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
The last one on this list is Public Works Development Service Facility Design. This is to design a new public works building. The building would also include development service, public works shop, and offices for our city engineer, building staff, etc. Our current public works facilities leave something to be desired. We're using the old rural metro fire buildings. And if you've been to facilities, anyway, we need better offices for public works. We need a modern shop over there for public works and offices. And again, this would just be the design and engineering for that. $200,000, and we gave that a 5.
And this is for a facility down at the old rural metro station, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Am I on or I don't know.
We can
Anyway,
Yes, you're on.
what would be the chance of moving this up and putting this into a more fast track for things to get done on that building? One, the building that's there is, I don't know how much longer it's going to stand up, but it's pretty unsightly. The other thing is that you guys, the Public Works Richard needs a better space than over there in that double wide or whatever you want to call it, mobile home. And I just think that why can't we prioritize that kind of thing and move it into the other list that Paige has put together?
Councilor
That's
Romack.
Councilor Romack, you hit on a very good point. That's the purpose of this conversation. It's to see things on how they're prioritized, where they're at in the plan. And if we feel strongly about moving them, that's the whole idea, is to get that done tonight.
Thank you.
So there is no reason why we can't move that forward to 22, is there?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, let's do that.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. The Camelback Road Engineering has the 3, which is a low priority. How does this fit in with, I believe we've got something coming up here to accept Camelback Road and accept funds and rebuild Camelback Road?
Woody?
This project, ideally, this project the construction of this project would mesh with Sun Health's construction of the north half of Camelback Road. Not knowing exactly when we're going to go ahead and move ahead and spend the money to construct the south half, what I'd like to do is get the engineering done and the plans finished so that they're sitting there ready to go. If either we determine that because of traffic and congestion and so on, safety, that it's time to build that south half as a freestanding project, or along comes Sun Health and they're ready to build their north half, and we can give them the plans and say, here, go ahead and build the south half at the same time.
We're getting $3.5 $1.511 million from the county to annex this, and we're considering adoption tonight. We need to spend this engineering, I presume, to be able to spend this $3.5 million.
That's partially correct,
So-
yes.
so-
Some of the 3.5 million will go towards this project. Some of it will go toward pavement rehabilitation for the segment between Litchfield Road and Dicer Road.
Okay.
None of it can be expended until sometime. I think the earliest the money is available is probably 23.
Okay. I was just wondering why this has such a low priority when it looks like we're getting money and we're going to start spending it. But okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Woody, is there any benefit to having one engineer do that entire, all the engineering on that corner?
I'm sorry, are you talking about the south half of Camelback Road?
Yeah, well, how about the same engineer doing both the north and the south?
That would be a possibility, yes. If Sun Health came forward and said, we're ready to start designing the north half, then we'd say, okay, here, we'll give you some money and you can design the south half.
Well, it would match up a little bit better.
Yeah, okay. I'll
You know
accept.
what I'm saying is it just seems like, plus there's some sort of economies of scale in something like that. You know, if you're drawing one line and anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yes, I do. But by the same token, I have no idea when Sun Health is going to move forward with their project, and they're allowed to build their north half in 2 phases. So the other thing I'm concerned about is that this may become a safety issue because that section of 2-lane road is already carrying way more traffic than it was intended.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on these 5? Okay. 23 projects continued. $100,000 for the Vista Drive drainage issue. That would be to repave the portion to provide better drainage. We gave that a 2. Public Works capital equipment replacement, that's $100,000. We gave that a 5 to replace aging and declining equipment and vehicles. Perimeter wall repair replacement, that's $100,000. We gave that a 4. That's regular paint and repair maintenance of the wall. Rec Center lobby remodeling, $50,000. That gave that a 3. Updates existing lobby. That one's been on the budget for years and just keeps getting kicked year after year for several years. City Hall updates, $30,000. We gave that a 3. Furniture office updates, paint, electrical, etc. The last one on this 5 would be the security cameras, $25,000. We gave that a 4. This would be a camera system for City Hall, for the Rec Center, and for Public Works. This is something that I think would be helpful, especially it would be nice to have newer cameras at the rate. The cameras that are there, at least something to be desired. Have one at the dock, same way for City Hall, Public Works. Any questions on on these 6?
Councilman Romack.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. I have been a voice, it seems like alone, but I think that we need to really consider a new city hall. And to spend money on updating the existing city hall is understandable when it's furniture and safety with the electrical, but it seems to me that we also need to be discussing in long-term, but in reasonable terms, the building of a new city hall that works for all of us, especially as we move forward rebuilding the Public Works building.
Councilman Romack, there are discussions going on a variety, a couple of ideas that are not ready for prime time in terms of public discussion, to end up with a city hall to replace what we're in now. But it's not something that really is, it's not ripe for discussion. But as soon as it is, which I hope will be maybe in the next 6 to 8 months, then we'll be coming to the council for a work study session that will have impacts on a couple things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions on these 6? Okay. Continued. Door badge reader lock system, $22,000. That is a preliminary price. We gave that a 5. As mayor council, as you may be aware, anytime we have an employee change, we change code. It would be nice to have a modern badge system for our facilities. It would just make things easier. It would be a nice upgrade. To Councilman Romack's question, though, if you're going to look at a new city hall, obviously you wouldn't want to do that yet, but it's something that is needed. But computer printers, IT equipment, software, $30,000. We give that a 5. Self-explanatory, old computers, printers, software, etc. That gives us a total recommended projects for FY23 of $8,477,500. 8.4. Also, staff projects the city will have 10.8 million available for 23 CIP projects. Any questions
from
on
council?
any other questions on 23 general fund projects before we move forward into other funds? Paige, I'm back to you.
Thank you, Matthew, Mayor and Council. So to recap where we would be at in the general fund if we did do these projects. On the left side is our current fiscal year projected numbers. So we started the year with a fund balance of just under 15.9 million. I'm anticipating that our net general fund operations, which is revenues minus expenses, will have a positive nearly 2.6 million. Then we have to back out the Litchfield Square bond payment at 420,000. So our fund balance before one-time revenues and expenses is roughly 18 million. And we add in our one-time projected construction sales tax revenue of 1.7. Then we back out the projects we've already completed of just under 1 million, and less the projects in progress, just under 3.4, and then less the remaining recommended projects if council does decide to go forward with those, another 847,000. That would leave us with about 14.5 million at the end of June. So then when we roll that forward to next year's projections, again, we'll start the year with about 14.5. I think I'm being conservative with our projection for next year, having the same positive 2.5 million next year. I think I'm also being conservative with our construction sales tax revenue. I've put in $2 million, but with all the activity with just Litchfield Square alone, I think this is a good conservative number. And then we take out the remaining projects that we just went through. That would leave us with 10.5 million at the end of fiscal year 23. Council does have a policy to keep 50% in reserves. And so we would, 50% of our expenses in reserves, which totals about 5 million. So we'd still have more than twice of what council's policy is on reserves. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions before we move into HERF?
Thank you, Matthew. So we just finished up the general fund projects, but we do still have another bucket of money, our HERF fund, which those funds are restricted. It can only be used on highways and streets. So for fiscal year 22, we have completed the Village Parkway sinkhole repair. It was just over $39,000. And then our ongoing street maintenance plan, through the end of December, we've spent just under 49,000. So those two projects together, we've spent about 88,000. Next slide, please.
Question before you go to the next slide. These city street maintenance projects, are they all in work? So they're going to get finished in fiscal year 22?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. on the agenda tonight is about $300,000 worth of pavement treatments. And then next meeting, I hope to bring to you the remainder of the pavement work, which will be, I'm estimating about 600,000.
Okay, good, good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we can move to the next slide. So for fiscal year 23, we're recommending to the Litchfield Road mill and overlay with a cost estimate of $450,000 and a staff rating of 5. The repairs will be scheduled for spring of 23 after the roundabout is completed, and then continue with the city street maintenance of $800,000 with also a rating of 5. And the HERF will have about this exact amount, $1,250,000 available to spend next year. And that's all I have for HERF. If there's any more questions before we move on to the ARP funds. So if you remember, the city was awarded $2,149,496 in the American Rescue Plan funds. We have received half of that so far. We'll receive the other half next year. There is still a lot of guidance forthcoming. A final rule came out last week that's still being digested. However, we do believe these projects do qualify that we can use ARP funds for these projects. So we are recommending the downtown storm drains construction. The city half of that is $1.2 million. We are giving that a 5. It's the storm drains in the old Litchfield Road, Fairway Drive, and Neolin Avenue. And then the other project we believe ARP funds can be spent on is the Vista Verde drainage improvement project. This project has been going on, and we have spent some engineering out of the city engineer's budget of $66,700 so far. However, if the project is approved, we would use ARP funds for the remaining about $500,000. But this is construction of the 100-year flood control measures for the Vista Verde neighborhood, and we also gave that a 5. So there will still be some remaining ARP funds after these 2 projects, but we would bring additional projects to council that we could use ARP funds for, but these are the 2 that we have so far. Yeah, that's all I have on ARP. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Questions from council?
Vice Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. The Peninsula project, does that not qualify to go into this category?
I'm not, Vice Mayor, I'm not familiar with that. Woody, would you be able to help me, or Matthew?
Go ahead, Woody.
I don't think I can answer that question. I'm not familiar with what the criteria is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Actually,
Okay.
I should back up just a minute. I'm sorry, Matthew and Vice Mayor. The final rule that came out last week, there is a rule in there that smaller cities that received under $10 million may be able to use these funds for any purpose. The league is going through it, and we want to verify that before we give you a solid answer on that. So if that's the case, we could use these funds for any project.
Well, I guess my question is, we're doing storm drains in Old Litchfield Road. We're doing 100-year flood control in Vista Verde. How come the flood control for Peninsula isn't on this list?
Or in that case, the Bullard Wash, wouldn't that be something that was in here as well? Would fit?
On the Bullard Wash connections, Councilmember Claire?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. In my opinion, the Bullard Wash connections wouldn't work under this one. These are more stormwater projects, flood control projects, where the Bullard Wash projects, that's really just connecting the road to the trail that's in Bullard Washes. It's not flood control, it's really just providing connections.
We can certainly
Understood.
look to see, yeah, well, we can look to see if that project would fit.
Be glad to.
And understand, then take a look at cash flow to see, how the cash flow will match up in these projects with the receipt of funds from ARP.
We do have until the end of 2020, or we must spend the funds by the end of 2025. So we will definitely look for every possible avenue to spend the full award. We definitely don't want to give any of that back.
We just want to make sure that we're
Can't
going
give
on-
any back,
No.
not permitted.
Yeah.
One,
No,
it's
we
a
don't give
one-way
it back.
street.
We just want to be careful. The guidelines keep changing on ARP funds, what they can and cannot be spent money on. First, it was just stormwater. It keeps changing now. It's city size. We just want to be careful. Whatever we spend it on, we're spending it on correctly. That's all. We'll certainly be glad to look and see if we can spend it on Vista Verde and also the Bullard Wash connections.
All righty.
Well, Vista Verde you've got in here. Question, it was the peninsula. Isn't that a storm water project at the peninsula?
Yes, it is. Right. It is a stormwater project.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council?
Paige, anything else on ARP?
No, that's it, Matthew.
The staff need anything further to start getting this organized and start bringing us back projects?
I was actually going to make a few closing comments, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Please.
Basically, Mayor and Council, what we need on this is we've been looking at CIP projects for several meetings this year. We would request a ranking from council as far as which projects you want to see us move forward. You've seen 22 projects. Several of them are already underway. Some of them are not. Obviously, as you've seen tonight, there's some projects that council seems to want to move forward more than others. And that's things we need to know. We need to know which projects you want to see us move forward for 22 and 23 as well. So we can plan which project, as the mayor said, to get in the preliminary design phase. So what we'd like to do is send out the list of projects to you so you can give us a ranking on these, on which projects you want to see move forward. For example, as Councilmember Romack said, moving up the Public Works building. That's a great example of moving one up from 23 to 22 based on need. If Mayor and Council approved the whole list for 22 and 23, again, they all have to come back to you for individual approval. But if every project was approved at the end of 23, as Paige said, that would still leave us $10.5 million cash on hand. So that's what we'd be requesting. In a perfect world, we would have a basic approval from council to move forward with planning this list of projects. Of course, with the caveat that every project comes back to council for individual approval.
Any questions or comments from council?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Matthew, in years past, we've always had this meeting and we've gotten one sheet. And with that one sheet, we all looked at it, went down through issues like we've done tonight, and we moved things up and down on that one sheet, which is far easier to understand and to review than the 18 sheets I printed out in this packet to kind of review. Because even after we've gone through this, I still have no idea which is at the top of the list because there's a whole bunch of 5s and 4s. When we had one sheet and we prioritized everything above or below, above had a higher priority and below had a lower priority for any one item. I can't pull that information out of this kind of presentation.
Mr. Vice Mayor, the sheet, I'm sorry, sir, the sheet you're talking about, is that the one we revised that we looked at during the December council meeting, that we based that off previous years? I think that's the one you're talking about.
I don't know. I've seen it for almost 20 years now, every year.
Okay.
And we would move stuff up and down it.
Mr. Vice Mayor, before he sends out the staff is going to send out a sheet like that. It could end up being a 2-page sheet only because there's 22 things on it. We want to have the type that's large enough so everyone can read it. But we will have we'll have an individual sheet that has all the projects listed and all the priorities listed and cost listed you saw tonight. And then you can move them around to your heart's content and then provide them back to staff, and we'll put together a final list like that. So we'll have a simple final list to work from.
Is everything on the last sheet we approved that has not been finished in this 18 pages we have here now?
Staff will check on that, because that's probably impossible to answer that.
And the list you're talking about, sir, goes through 26, where of course tonight's are only 22 and 23. If it's the same list I'm thinking of.
Yeah, if you could, Matthew, I'd like to see that list.
Yes, sir. We'll be glad to provide it
If
to you
you've
guys.
got it, if you've got it, probably more available than me trying to dig it out.
Yes, sir. We'll send it out to you guys soon.
Okay, great,
And-
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes, Councilman Clare.
Matthew, is it also, you made comment about the rec center lobby, and that money's been kicked around for the last few years. If there's anything that's more than 1 or 2 years on there, can we somehow notate that this project has been sitting out there for 3, 4, 5 years, so we know what we're working with, whether we need to step this up or remove it?
We certainly could, so that's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can you switch the view back to seeing everybody instead of seeing that? There you go. Thank you. I feel much more comfortable now. All right, any other questions from council? Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll get this ranking sheet or sheets out to everybody on council so you can mark it up, and then if you can get it back to us as soon as possible, we'll be able to get it into a final form and then get staff moving. And if we need further direction from council, we'll bring it back for one more work study.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn the work study? Moved by Councilman Clare, is there a second by Councilman Lisa Brainerd Watson? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, work study session is over. Does there anybody need a couple minutes before we start the council? Is that a yes? Okay, so we're going to take 5 minutes. So I've got 6:55, 6:56. We'll start at 7:01. All right, I've got 7:01. We got everybody back probably?
I'm here.
All right, looks like Councilman Clare, are you here?
Yes, sir. Sorry about
Mr.
that.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Councilman Stosey's here, yes?
I don't see him, sir.
No, I don't see him yet either. We're going to go ahead and get started at 7:01. So I'll call this regular meeting of the City Council to order. We've already had a pledge of allegiance, so we're going to go into councilman reports. We'll start with Councilman Romack. Who has to unmute?
Unmute.
You did it once, you went back. There you go.
There. I don't have anything to report.
Okay. Thank you for unmuting. Councilman Rostosi.
Just got back. I assume we're on council reports.
Yes, we are.
Sorry for being a split second late.
No
I
worries.
did just have one thing to report. I just wanted to report frustration. I just want to report frustration around the timing on our council packets. It works a lot easier for me. Maybe I'm the only one. If we get those before the weekend, I don't think it's a reasonable expectation, especially last month. Last month we had, I think, 1,000 pages, mostly legal contracts in our packets. And we had about less than 48 hours to read them to prepare. Less than 48 hours this month as well to read our full packets and prepare. I just think that's rude and not serving the city well when the city council doesn't have time to properly prepare. So just want to express frustration.
Your frustration is well noted, and it has been expressed already to staff that this situation has got to change. Councilman Clare.
Something I got to do in the last little bit was we got to go to the memorial for Barbara Brainerd, and it was great to see the outpouring of support for the Brainerd family and the presentation that Lisa gave in regards to her mom, and just the history of Litchfield Park that's gone through that family.
Thank you, Councilman Clare. Councilman Donahue.
I attended the governor's luncheon, which actually is the first thing I've attended, I think, since COVID. So it was good to see some of our cohorts from other cities and a lot of people there. I actually went with Shelley Hornback, so that brings up the Litchfield Elementary District. And I will just say that we need to be reminded about COVID. That very day when we went to the luncheon, it was on Wednesday, the Litchfield District had 10 times that, 70 teachers out. So we need to continue to, and if they need subs. So if anybody has a little extra time, but anyway, obviously Omicron, we think is moving its way out, but our local districts are still suffering terribly from that kind of thing. So they're back to school district. So anyway, that's all.
Hey, thank you. Councilman Lisa Brainerd Watson.
Hello, thank you. I'd like to first of all thank those of you who were so kind in your wishes to my family. We really appreciated your presence and knowing that people cared about her. I haven't done anything really particularly council related this month. Been kind of busy on travel. I was here for the parade and wanted to comment. I don't think I haven't had a chance yet to comment on the great job that was done by city staff on that. And the Indian Festival also appeared to be handled really well as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor. Since we can't see him, we don't know what's going on. Oh, there he is.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. First off, my regrets to the Brainerd family and Lisa. Barbara was on the council when I was first appointed a long time ago, so Lisa's following in some pretty impressive footsteps with her civic volunteering here. I want to parrot, I had this on my list also, to complain again about the late packets Councilman Rostosi was talking about. It's really not acceptable. I need these things Friday. To find the time to review these things during a Monday or a Tuesday, and Monday's my busiest day of the week. It doesn't work. I usually do them over the weekend. So, if they're not getting out on Friday, I think we probably should be told why and who's holding up the show, so that we have a little better idea what's going on. And if some of our people can't get their stuff in the packet, so be it. It doesn't get done, and we know who it is. My third thing is waste management. I've seen stuff sitting on the sidewalks for weeks, waiting for their bulk pickup, which, the service and waste has been poor, and I'm sure they've had the same problems everybody else is having right now with labor and maintenance and everything else. But I hope we can do something to encourage them to do a little bit better job than the job they are doing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say about either the comment on the packets or waste management.
Yes, sir, I would. Mr. Vice Mayor, first of all, the waste management. We actually met with waste management last week. Myself and Sonny and Paige did, and discussed with them with some customer service issues we've been having with them, and then doing a better job on a few things. We also discussed the contract. So I think that was a good meeting as far as things they need to improve and work on. So hopefully we'll see that comes forward, but we'll certainly let them know there's still issues. There's the issues you addressed. As far as the packet goes, the first thing I would like to say on that is not on the city clerk. It's not on her fault in any way, to be clear on that. As far as the council packets, for the last 2 times, we've been waiting on items that are related to city center. I'm trying to push those through, and like, for example, on one of those, we were literally negotiating on one of these items Monday. And that's why you got the packet on Monday, because we were waiting on that one item, just to be totally clear on that. That being said, I certainly understand what council's saying on deadlines, and you do need more time to review these things. And we have been discussing that on getting some timelines that work better for everybody. And we do have to have a cutoff date, or if it doesn't get to us by cutoff date, then it automatically rolls to the next meeting. So, but again, it's not waiting on staff stuff. On both the past 2 meetings, this one and last month, it was city center related items. And again, that's a no fault of the city clerks. So I'll just be absolutely clear on that. That's been us working on city center items. We will do better on that and on getting things to you in a better fashion where you have more time to review them. And you're right, you can't review a 400-page packet in 2 days. It just doesn't work. And I'll take that, and we'll do a better job at fixing that. I apologize for that.
Matthew, I suggest you use a hard deadline date, and I don't know if it's Wednesday or Thursday of the week, so that there is nothing that can possibly keep you from getting that packet out on a timely basis by Monday at noon, or Friday at noon. And then if there's anything that's missed, if it's that important, we'll schedule a special meeting if we really have to deal with it before the next meeting. But we cannot keep holding these packets for these items.
Yes, sir. I would agree.
All right. Councilman Stossy.
Just one other thought, if it's one item that's holding up the packet, then get us the packet less the item. And then when Monday comes, we only have one item to read through instead of 250 pages.
We can certainly do that as well, sir.
All right, we will make improvements in this so that so council is not inconvenienced like this in the future. We don't want to be like the federal government and find out what we passed after we pass it. Right?
Agreed.
Okay, I think I've now hit everyone.
Do you still want me to do my manager's report, sir?
Yeah, except I just want to make a mention. I also want to give my condolences to Lisa and to her family. I actually started when I first moved to Litchfield Park. One of the first things I got involved in after Little League and soccer was to get elected to the school board. And I had the pleasure of serving with Barbara Brainerd and some others on that board. And it was quite a very special time. And it got me introduced to the idea of community service. So unfortunately, I, for various reasons, was not able to attend the service, and I apologize for that. One of which is that I have tested positive for COVID, so I've been in my house now for several days. I'm going stir crazy, but I'm getting my voice back and we'll be out and about soon. Now, Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Yes, sir, I do. I would echo some of the mayor's comments there. I appreciate council working with me. As you know, I was homesick last week, and me and my son both had COVID. We're both fine now. But yeah, I think it's just sooner or later, I think we're all going to go through it, unfortunately. Mayor and council, you have, of course, the report in your packet, and I'm just going to hit on a few of the highlighted items. Sorry. Lost my tab here. Okay. Staff is continuing working on the Park Memorial Bench Program. We get a lot of questions about how to sponsor a bench in our park. So we don't actually have an established program. Many cities have an established program where you get on a waiting list to sponsor a bench, replace a bench, et cetera. We are working with RPG on that program where we can have a waiting list for benches, a standard bench for all city parks. And we're making good progress. That's a good program to establish. I work with that in other cities, and I think RPG and staff are doing a good job with that. Paige, Terry, and Tricia are met to discuss the city's social media presence and the city marketing as a whole. They're working on that, on making some changes. And we're also going to be bringing a local government communications and social media manager from another city to help us with this. We've got some improvements we can do on our website and social media just to catch us up where we need to be. So we are working on that to make those improvements. Staff met with Avondale PD to discuss the parade. We had a very successful parade this year, but one thing we do have to plan is that the parade, of course, ends in the area around City Hall. And as City Center develops, those parking areas are going to disappear. So we have to plan for changes for how the parade ends, unloading area, et cetera. So we are working on those changes. We did meet recently with Sun Health where negotiations are continuing. That was mentioned already for the hilltop restoration. And we're getting closer on that. It's just, of course, it's negotiation back and forth. And of course, Paul's here with us. And I think we're getting closer on that agreement every time we meet up. So we're slowly getting there. On tonight's agenda, you will see the general plan update. Jason will be on there, and that will be on here later. Again, that will be on the August 2022 election. One last thing I would add. In the December council packet, I had a statement that has been brought to the attention of staff that agendas and packets for the design review board have not been prepared in accordance with the law. That was actually a case of, it was not actually a violation of law, rather it's a question of best practice. The law requires agendas to be posted at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. However, that law does not apply to the packets. Rather, the practice of posting the packet along with the agenda is a best practice, not a legal requirement. My apologies for any inconvenience that caused. That's in no relation at all to the packets being late. I just wanted to refer to that. It's always been, in my experience, that packets and agendas were posted at the same time. But again, it's a question of best practice, not law. But hopefully that remedies that situation with any inconvenience that may have caused. Any questions?
Just a comment, Matthew, that we have a marketing group that was assembled to work on social media type marketing and that kinds of things, specifically related to City Center. But it might very well be that there'll be one or more people on that committee that might be willing to help on the other general, more broader question of social media marketing for the city as a whole.
Yes, sir. And we are planning on converting that committee to this purpose.
That'd be good, because there's some very sharp young people on that committee, and a few sharp old ones. So.
Good altogether.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with the comments as far as the packets. It is real burden to go through those things on Monday and Tuesday. So hopefully that'll change. But what I wanted to bring up, and Matthew, you and I and the mayor had a short conversation about utilizing the lake in different ways and more ways. I haven't heard anything back on any suggestions, but I did talk to someone on design review, and we had a kind of a long conversation about development and developing the lake as more of an asset for our community, because it really is an asset. We're spending a lot of money to maintain it, and yet we're not using it as the asset that it really presents itself. So I would hope that there's some consideration of what's going on there.
Yes, sir, certainly. And I think we could look when we're in the budget process about adding some additions. I know some things you wanted to do over there that you'd like to add in there, such as recreational activities, that we could certainly look at doing it as part of that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, we will go on to this meeting's response to last meeting's call to the community. There were no requests to speak at last meeting, so there's no response. That brings us to this meeting's call to the community. Ms. City Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
We do not, sir.
All right, then we'll go on to our report section. My agenda says that we have Chief Cole, but I'm looking at maybe Chief Wayne. Is that correct? Or do I have Chief Cole and don't see him?
Actually, you are correct, sir. You have Chief Wayne.
Okay,
Chief
welcome.
Cole is Chief Cole will be here next month. It'll probably be his last council meeting, by the way. He retires in May of this year. We're all going to miss him. For the month of December, I got the report. My apologies, I'm multitasking here. I'm in another event. So I'll do a review of what we're up to in the month of December. I'll start with fire prevention. We had one plan review, conducted one construction permit, and did 5 construction inspections along with 11 occupancy inspections, and then of course the 2 special events. We saw uptick in calls again, like we did from the month before for December. I'm assuming a lot of those are attributed to our increased numbers in COVID calls. But overall, we had 82 for the month. 76 of those were medically related, 2 service calls, 1 good intent, and 1 false alarm. We did have 1 significant event as a water rescue in the canal that was just south of Indian School. When we had a gentleman slip in there, dispatched a full TRT assignment. Upon arrival, they had located this gentleman. He was down by the grates to the point where he had been so tired and worn out that he was barely able to stay afloat. Quick actions by our crews were able to get him out and save this man's life, no doubt. So just a point of interest for that significant call in the community. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Can you tell us what's going on at Las Cruces? Looks like they're almost all the emergency calls came from there this month.
Yeah, we had a month like we did in November where we saw a high number of calls to that facility. 16 actually for the month of December. Of those were 13 of those were advanced life support calls. So significant calls. What we're finding is we had the EMS chief arrive and go check in with them to see what was happening and see what the increase in call volume was attributed to. And their model and patients that they've been accepting were a nature where they were just critically sick. So they have told us they're going to change that model and not have folks that are that need that high level of care. So hoping those communications will continue and we'll stay on them to address these surges in call volumes that we're seeing from month to month.
That would be good because we don't want to see them abusing our system.
Agreed. And we were able to make a lot of success with the other assisted living in the community. Those relationships continue. And I think as a result, those numbers continue to be relatively modest for a facility of that size.
I would agree. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, I don't see any. Chief Wayne, thank you for coming down and giving us your report. Do urge Chief Cole to come next month so that we can say goodbye to him. You know, I'm sure his retirement is going to be a strain on your department, but I'm also sure that it's a well-deserved retirement after many years of service to our community. So give him.
Indeed, we'll miss him greatly. Thank you. Will do, sir.
All righty, thanks.
Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Before I get away, I had one comment. When this particular business came to us a couple of years ago, asking to increase the population density in the existing buildings, their call volume was almost nothing for the few months before that request came to us. They know how to operate that facility with their existing employees and a low call volume. Something is wrong, as you mentioned. Maybe it's the kind of people that what they're accepting for residents at this stage, but something is different and something is wrong. This is, maybe we need to go back, Mayor, at some point and consider have an agenda item to talk about how we address these issues. I mean, they're over 20% of our call volume this month, that one business that we're subsidizing.
Correct.
I think the place where we need to start, Mr. City Manager and Mr. City Clerk, would be to go back and pull the minutes from the meetings that they came when we considered the change in zoning and change in density that we allowed them in their rooms, and see if we can track down the conversations that were had, and if there are any agreements reached in those meetings.
We can certainly do that.
All right. Councilman Donahue.
Well, I think the other problem with assisted living is that staff changes all of the time. So that group that came before probably hasn't been trained that says, hey, listen, we need to take care of much of this ourselves versus calling out. So it could be that as well. We just need to remind them because they change all the time.
Correct. We've seen that as well. Staff turnover has been a constant in that facility. Looks like they do have good folks working there. I just think the folks that they're taking in are just way beyond what they can actually handle.
All right. Thank you for your service, Chief. We will
Thank you, sir.
pass our thanks on to all your guys. We appreciate them.
Proud to serve. Thank you.
Okay, brings us to the Avondale Police Department report. Chief Espinoza, good to see you again.
Likewise, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the month of December, our team responded to a total of 265 calls for service to the residents of Litchfield Park. Of those 265 calls for service, 139 were officer-initiated calls for service. In addition to that, we had a total of 10 flock alerts involving 6 vehicles. Out of those 6 vehicles, 3 of those vehicles were located and addressed accordingly. Some of the significant, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, so please bear with me. Some of the significant calls for service that we dealt with in the month of December is we had 2 burglaries that happened at the La Loma homestead, and we are working with our community action team to address that issue with some strategies that I'd rather not discuss, but I'll be more than happy to discuss with you guys in person. Any questions for me?
Questions from council?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Chief, yeah, I just want to thank you for the job you and your officers are doing. The activity that we are seeing coming from our police department, from you guys, is far more activity than we have seen in a very, very, very long time. And the flip side of that is I'm getting no complaints from the citizens, even though your activity is way up. So your guys are doing a good job, and apparently the contact they're having with the citizens is positive. So, please take that back to your officers.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We appreciate your kind words, and we will let our staff know.
I will echo those. It is pleasant to see the cruiser around town on a regular basis. And it's been, I think, really interesting not to see just only one, but on occasion we actually see two cruisers. There was actually, I think there were 2 cruisers that were watching Litchfield Road in the construction zone area. One that was past the construction zone and one that was up in the middle of it. And you could tell it was having a positive impact on that traffic. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we'll move on then to our staff reports. We have a report from Finance, Ms. Paige Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have the December 31st report, which is 50% through the fiscal year. I'd like to share my screen really quick and start with our sales tax report. Sales tax through the end of December. Just a few things I wanted to point out. You'll see that online sales in December was 303,000, which was a 624% increase over last year. And that's because the state did an audit and collected about $240,000 from that audit and online sales. Due to the nature of this business and just the amount of it, we have reached out to DOR just to confirm that that in fact does belong to Litchfield Park, because we don't want to count on it and then have to give it back. But since it did go through an audit, I am hopeful that it truly does belong to us, but definitely one-time revenue and anomaly, so not something we would continue to receive. Good news for restaurant and bar activity. It's up 55% over last year. Rentals are also up 34%. The other category, there was a significant use tax payment of about $100,000 that I would also consider a one-time revenue. But in total, we are 71% over December of last year, and year to date, we're up 21%. So doing very well. Our construction sales tax, you'll see, is down 52%. However, the construction sales tax that we are paying back, one of the reports finally did post, and the contractor took back about $60,000. So it looks like that correction is slowly starting to come in. I suspect we'll see a larger adjustment in January. And that's all I have for sales tax. Happy to answer any questions before I move on to the financial report, if there are any.
Questions for council? I don't see any, so please move ahead.
Okay, did that switch over to the other report?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. To look at our general fund revenues as a whole, you'll see that we're 59% of budget estimates, so 9% over budget, so doing very well. Big part of that is our local sales tax is doing so well. We're at 62%. The only revenues that are less than 50 right now are special events, but those are just starting to pick up, and we did post some December revenue after this report was put together, so we should see an uptick in that next month. And then interest rates are just very low, and so that's why we're only at 20%. Operating as a whole, we're just at 45% of budget estimates, so 5% below budget. A few departments that are over 50%. A lot of that are just one-time expenses, and so it takes a little while for those to smooth out. The only one that I know for sure will be over budget estimates is the information technology. With all the change in contractor, unfortunately, we've had some overlap in different licensing and things, and so as the year progresses, we will be requesting to move budgeted contingency to cover the increase in IT costs. So through the end of December, net general fund operations is just under 1.5 million. So we've collected 1.5 million more than expenses, so doing really well. Our construction sales tax is right at 1.3, and our ARP funds is just over $1 million. Capital expenses through December, $919,000, and then the transfer to the Litchfield Square construction account is just under 1.4. That's the utility cost that we talked about during the work session. So that leaves an ending fund balance in the general fund of $17.4 million. Recreation services, there is a lot of detail with recreation services and special events. I won't go through that detail. It is in your packet, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end if anybody has any. Jumping to our special revenue funds, our HERF fund, which we've already gone over tonight, we've spent just about $88,000. More projects will be coming to you for approval tonight and next month. So we have a total fund balance in there of $1,285,000. In our Litchfield Square Capital Project Fund, here's the general fund portion for utilities, that's 1.377. The bond proceeds of $15 million. And so far we have expended through the end of December, $3.5 million. Then our the SLIDs, we're right on track where we should be with property taxes and budget the expense as well. Then the court enhancement fee or fund, If you remember, we are using that now to pay for half of the magistrate court operating costs. I suspect it's at the end of the year, we should have right about a 50-50 split between this and the general fund. Then we'll have to check the fund balance in it because the minimum balance has to be 50,000. And at the end of December, we're at 146,501. So in total, citywide fund balance at the end of December is 31.7 million. Of course, 1.4 is restricted for special revenue funds, and then 12.9 for Litchfield Square from the bond proceeds. But that gives us 20.4 months worth of operating expenses on hand, and you'll see our 5 million in reserves is set aside for reserves. And that's all I have, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions from council?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. On page 28 of our packet, as you mentioned this briefly, we've got apparently a requirement. We have a minimum reserve balance of 50,000 per city ordinance for the court enhancement fund. Why do we have that, and why do we care, and why don't we delete that 50,000 reserve balance on the court enhancement fund and just spin this thing down, minimize the bookkeeping, and simplify this process?
And that was the ordinance that we brought to you a few months ago, and after some discussions with the judge and the court administrator, that was, I guess, the agreement that we landed with them, that we would hold that in reserves for them in case of emergencies, capital costs that they might need. So that was the discussion at the time when we made that change.
Mr. Vice Mayor, it's a negotiation process that you probably are happy you were not part of.
With the judge, I presume.
I have nothing
Okay,
more to say.
thanks.
I'm just saying that let's leave this. Let's let this horse sleep.
Okay, it just seems like a useless small amount of money that we're spending a lot of time trying to keep pigeonholed, but okay, understand.
Well, it's smaller than it was. It was 180,000. Now it's going to be down to 50. So it's good. We're making progress.
Right.
Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you for the report, Ms. Peterson. And we will go on to the Litchfield Square update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a few highlights from the last couple of weeks. As you know, we've torn up the east side of Litchfield Road. Unfortunately, we've lost some time there while APS is relocating a power line that they didn't know about until we told them about it. So they're in the process of doing that. And hopefully we'll see the dirt and the concrete start to fly here pretty soon. The on-site improvements, the water system is essentially finished. We're in the process of completing the storm drains. So a lot of the underground work is being finished. Aiken Gardner's subcontractor is beginning to install all the joint trenches for the dry utilities. So that's the power, gas, telecommunications, all of that is underground. We also recorded the plat that you approved back in December. And Aiken Gardner is soon to start the actual parcel grading. So continuing to move ahead. We've lost a little bit of time because of Liberty Utilities and APS, but Aiken Gardner is hopeful that we can make up a lot of that over the next several months. Thank you.
All right, any questions on Litchfield Square from the council? I don't see any. Thanks for your report, Mr. Scouten. Obviously, we're anxious to see this move as quickly as possible.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Brings Brings us now to our consent agenda, item 8A through D. Is there any individual on the council who would like to take any item off of the consent agenda?
Item D, then
Seeing
Delta.
none. Okay, well, D for Delta.
Correct.
So is there a motion to adopt items 8A through C?
So moved.
All right, moved by Councilman Clare, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda is adopted without item D. We'll go to item D as the first item of regular business. Mr. Vice Mayor, since you are the one who asked it to be taken off, what is your question?
In the report, it says, during design, several features were added to the project by the HOA, which raised the cost over the original $250,000 estimate. How much did it raise the cost, and what's the HOA asking for?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, it basically is items that give them comfort that they're not going to have standing water in their area. When, following a storm, they had concerns that the channel would retain water in the bottom. So we added a under drain system. They were also concerned about discharging directly onto the golf course. And they wanted to have a place where the water could store. So we added a retention basin. The retention basin requires a dry well. They also wanted to add a connection from the retention basin into the existing storm drain, so that if when the retention basin begins to fill up, it will overflow into the storm drain first before overflowing into the golf course. And then there were two additional catch basins. They wanted to make sure that the existing storm drain pipe carried as much water as possible during a major storm. And changing out the existing graded inlets to curb inlet style catch basins does a couple of things. It captures more water upstream so that there might be less in this channel that goes between the condos. And also it reduces the potential for clogging from all the pine needles that lined on the streets during a major storm. So it was a variety of things, and it happened over probably a year or so design process.
So we designed something that we thought was more than adequate, and then who's redesigning this project on the HOA's part? They hired an engineer to negotiate with us, or what happened here?
Yes, they did. They hired Ken Zell Engineering.
And when we first started this thing, we were attempting to do nothing more than create a small swell across the golf course to, I believe, the lake, which was part of the drainage system.
That's correct.
And it's now evolved into a pretty big project, it sounds like.
Well, it evolved first because the golf course refused to accept any kind of construction on their property. So we were left then with trying to get as much water into the pipe as possible, which, added the catch basins. And then, there's just the fears of standing water and in the channel. But yeah, it's been a negotiation. The good news is that the flood control district is paying for 75% of this, and they have approved the plans.
And we're sure that by capturing a whole bunch of extra water and shoving it into our existing storm drainage? We're not going to be putting other people at risk now?
No.
That fills up,
it
it
doesn't
won't
actually
take,
do,
Yes, we're sure of that because these condos are at the tail end of the drainage system. Everything that comes through this condo area goes to the golf course, either through the pipe or overland, and we're going to be assisting it when we build this channel.
so where's the water going then? I thought you said we couldn't get it across the golf course.
Mr. Vice Mayor, what happens is all the water that comes into those peninsula area, it all funnels across the golf course and into the lakes. Either
Right.
through the pipe that's underground where these culverts drain into, or the water literally goes through the condos that are at the south end of the development. It goes right through their condo units and their, the living rooms and
Right.
just the house. Goes right through the kitchen, goes right on out the back door, and it keeps right on going right across the golf course. And that hasn't changed. The only thing that really has changed is now there's a channel that takes that water and moves it out of those people's homes and runs it along the side of their homes. And then it still goes out eventually into that golf course, depending on how much rain we get.
Fair.
It is a good solution.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
thank you.
Yes.
it sounds
Yes,
to me like, thank you. Sounds to me like what we've proposed here is doesn't sound excessive. Is there anything that we're doing for them that we haven't done for other areas of our community?
All of these areas are unique because what happened when Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company laid this development out is they didn't do the engineering work that really needed to be done. So there have been various areas of the community over the years that have flooded, and as there have been funds available generally through the county flood control district, there have been a variety of projects done to move the water south through the park using mostly the streets and then those big culverts that go into the drainage ditch over by Indian School in the old bypass. So these are ongoing projects that are similar. It's part of the project that's going on now up by Scout Park is the same situation where it just was never done properly. And so now a lot of it has to be rebuilt and actually done, in a proper engineering method. So no, the long answer to the short answer is no. Any other questions or comments? It has been a lengthy negotiation and working process that Mr. Scout's done a good job on because it did involve the golf course not being cooperative, which did make the project a lot harder. And they're still not totally okay with the fact that we haven't gotten their permission. And we've told them we don't really need your permission. This water's been going there forever. We're just changing its route. So we're not going to let it go routing. We're not going to let the water route through the homes. It's going to route alongside the homes. And then eventually some of it's going to go on the course just like it always has. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, is there a motion to reject, and after all this, we're going to reject all the bids for the Vista Verde drainage and re-advertise it. You want to explain why we're rejecting them?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Scott?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received two bids. The low bid was so low that the project could not be built for that amount of money. And I could see change orders coming. Plus, I'm familiar with that contractor and his change order philosophies in the past. The high bid, the other bid, was twice as much as the low bid. And I talked to that contractor and he offered some suggestions on how we might be able to rebid it and bring the cost down. So the plan is to move some of the lump sum items into an allowance approach so that we may not end up spending all of the money that would otherwise be spent for things like traffic control and maybe for restoration of the grass and restoration of the irrigation system. So what I'd like to do is try to rebid this with allowances, part of it being allowances and the rest of it being a lump sum, and see if we can bring the cost down.
Okay, any questions from council?
Yep. Mayor, I should also add that this approach was approved by the Flood Control District, and they will be working with us to extend the timeline to complete the project.
Is there a motion to reject all bids from the Vista Verde Drainage Improvement Project that were received on December 29th, 2021? Direct staff to re-advertise the project.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Watson, seconded by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we'll get this out for and re-advertise it.
Thank you.
Now our normal business section. The first is a call for elections on May 17th, 2022. Ms. City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor and Council. The call for election is for the May 17th, 2022 special election. This will go out to the voters to authorize the sale of all or partial or portion of the 12 acres of real property located in the Litchfield Square. This would be for lots 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 12, and 13. Financial impact. Cost for a countywide non-countywide election is $2.12 compared to a countywide election for 50 cents per voter. We have 4,958 registered voters in the city for a total of $10,510.96 that will be paid to Maricopa County. Any questions?
Just a comment, so council knows what prompted this call for elections. One of the things that we've talked about over the last several years is that we have this requirement that if we sell a piece of property for more than $1.5 million, we have to get voter approval. And we've approached it with the assumption that we would have to wait until we had someone who wanted to pay $1.5 million for something, and then we would have to go vote it, which would take time and add time into the process of negotiating a transaction on city center parcels if we had anything that was more than 1.5 million. Our city attorney did a very good job and brought up a very good suggestion that we could actually combine this into one election and get a general approval for 1.5 million for either an individual parcel or all the parcels. So we only now have to have one election. We can get it done before we finish negotiations, and it will make the whole process a lot more streamlined and smooth. So I want to say thank you to the city attorney for a job well done on that. Any other questions, Councilman Donahue?
So this is a just in case,
Correct.
basically? Yeah.
If we sell every individual parcel for less than 1.5 million, we will not need this. But if we have one developer that comes in and wants to buy 4 parcels, then we will need this. And what we're doing is getting it done ahead of time so that we can go ahead and complete negotiations in a more timely manner.
Gotcha.
Questions or comments from council?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I still don't quite understand this. Is this a placeholder so that if we do get something in the next few months, we can have that specific sale on the ballot? Or is this a blank check that just lets us sell anything we want to sell for any price you want to sell? It's over 1.5 million.
It is not a blank check. It is an approval to sell the listed parcels that are on the plat, and they're specified in this call for the election. Either one or more of those parcels, so either singularly or in combination, we get permission to sell them for more than 1.5 million. So it is not a blank check. It simply covers that contingency in the future, so we'll be able to negotiate and not have to wait for another vote.
So this is going to give us approval if it takes 10 years to sell these one by one a year for $2 million apiece, and the council will be the sole decision maker on the price.
That's my understanding, yes. Mr. City Attorney.
If I may, Mayor, the statute doesn't provide a time period limitation for when the properties are to be sold. It just says real property of a city or town, the value of which exceeds 1.5 million shall not be sold unless first authorized by a special election called for the purpose of submitting to the voters the question of selling or not selling the property. The property then still, once approved, it still requires the property to be sold by public auction. So you still, even though you're authorized to sell it, you still have to go through the public auction process. So essentially what we're looking at is you're going to have an entity that's going to market and find purchasers, get interested buyers, and then we have we'll determine what the fair market value is of the property, set a minimum bid, and then allow them to move forward with a bid process in accordance with state law.
Got it. We still got to do the auction process to set the value. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that's part of the statute. Says that if a majority of the ballots cast in favor of selling, then the governing body may sell the property at a public auction after giving notice as required in 402. And it's just notice, but there's nothing in the statute that says you have to do this within 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And this is to be able to allow the city to get the best, highest value out of these properties, because what we didn't want to see is, it get marketed and you have offers coming in of over $1.5–2 million for a parcel, and then you have to delay things by then taking it to the voters for approval.
Councilman Romack.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. Joe, I think this is a good idea. I like that. I like the plan, and I hope it stands up going forward. I would just caution anybody who's writing the explanation of what this is going to be to be real careful. You got to make it very plain, because there's going to be a few people out there. They're going to say, "What the hell are you guys doing?" And it's just got to be really plain and simple and straightforward. So I probably don't want to be on that committee.
We're not going to let the vice mayor be on that committee either.
I was going to. I nominate Joe.
Any other questions or comments from council?
And if I could just point out one clerical correction that'll be handled in the resolution. The first whereas lists parcel 2 and it's supposed to be parcel 3. That was my typographical error, so that'll be corrected.
All right, is there a motion to adopt resolution 22-509, call of elections for May 17, 2022, to submit the question of authorizing the sale of all or a portion of approximately 12 acres in the city center?
Motion.
Moved by Councilman Clare, seconded by Councilman Rostosi. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Next item is the approval of a contract with Jones Lang LaSalle. We're going to move this to the end of the agenda because I think there may be an executive session on this council item. And we'll go on to item number C, which is adoption of ordinance 21-253 to de-annex a portion of Indian School Road right-of-way to allow the city of Avondale to seek annexation of Wigwam Creek South.
Mayor and council, this is just the second reading for the ordinance authorizing the de-annexation of this sliver of right-of-way over to Avondale so that they can move forward with their desired annexation of the property that the neighborhood they're seeking to annex.
The only
Motion
question I
to adopt.
remember, the only question I remember from last week was we wanted a confirmation from Mr. Scouten that this legal description is what we want. We're not getting ourselves in an issue with what part that we're opening up here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I checked the legal description location, and it is contained completely within the right-of-way, existing right-of-way of Indian School Road. So there's no impact on private property.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Mr. Vice Mayor, did I hear you or not?
Yeah, motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Council Romack. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right. Ordinance is adopted. Next item is ordinance 21-254, which is, I think, also a second reading on the short-term vacation rentals. Ms. Peterson?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, that's correct. This is the second reading for the short-term vacation rental ordinance. Last meeting, we didn't have any discussion or any follow-up items, but I am happy to answer any questions if there are any tonight.
Any questions for Ms. Peterson? Is that a raised hand, Councilman? Okay, no, all right. All right, I don't see any. Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 21-254 to amend the City of Litchfield Park Code, Article 8, adding a new 8-8 short-term vacation rentals? Moved by Councilman Donahue, seconded by Councilman Brainerd Watson. Is there any further discussion?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
I noticed in the paper that I think it was Scottsdale recently adopted an ordinance along these same lines with a whole lot more teeth in it. I'm not suggesting that we slow this adoption down, but maybe we should be looking at if what they did is proper, has been fully vetted, maybe coming back and amending this again.
Yeah, Mr. City Attorney, will you please look into that and we'll see what they're doing and whether it complies with state law.
Actually, we've already received a notice from the league that there is going to be a legal challenge against their ordinance, that they believe that it does overstep the bounds. So we will keep an eye on that. I would suggest that we keep it where it's at, and then depending on how that case goes, if Scottsdale prevails, then absolutely, then we can follow their lead, but allow them to incur the fees and costs to fight over that argument.
Yeah, good idea. Just to let council know what happens in these situations. If anyone in the state legislature believes that a city or town does anything whatsoever that violates or contradicts state law, they can make a complaint to the Attorney General's office. If the Attorney General agrees, they can actually take all of our state shared revenue unless we agree to stop it. So these fights are very expensive and very serious. So it's really great if Scottsdale wants to go fight this, let them fight it, and we'll see whether it's worth changing our ordinance in the future. Councilman Donahue.
So who is Scottsdale fighting, and what is the ordinance they're fighting? I'm just curious.
Yeah, they have a short-term vacation rental ordinance, which has a lot more, it's much more restrictive. And the restrictions that you're allowed to adopt by state law are very limited. So if they exceed what the state law allows them to do, then they are putting their state shared revenues at risk.
So Scottsdale is trying to, the city is trying to be stricter than the state, is what?
That's what it sounds like, yes.
Okay.
If I could, I'll read you the alert that we got from the league is that the Rose Law Group is actively encouraging legislatures to file a 1487 complaint against one of the cities for the new short-term rental ordinance, claiming that it goes too far. So there is a push to get the legislature to, one member of the legislature to file a 1487 complaint. That process is, and it goes to the Attorney General's office for review. If they determine that it does violate state statute, then Scottsdale has a very short period of time to either contest that finding or to change the ordinance to comport with state statute or risk their state shared revenues.
The interesting thing of 1487 is it can be a legislature from anywhere in the state. So it doesn't have to be a Scottsdale legislature that even brings it up. And a lot of these are being brought up, by legislators from the South. So it's a crazy world we live in. Any other questions about the short-term vacation rental ordinance? If not, I believe, Mr. City Clerk, we have a motion on the floor, correct?
Correct. And a second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Next item is the introduction of ordinance 22-255 on flood control damage prevention. Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is introduction of ordinance 22-255, which amends our city code to include provisions for underground retention in the city. And, I have an exhaustive explanation in the staff report. So let me just give you the highlights and see if there's any questions. For years, many cities and towns, including Litchfield Park, have been allowing developers, commercial site developers, to use underground retention for meeting their drainage requirements. However, and those same cities have policies that say that the developer should inspect it and clean it out on an annual basis, or at least inspect it on an annual basis and clean it out when needed. Because these are underground, it's not obvious that they're filling up with silt or other types of debris. But none of those cities and towns or counties have any provision that requires the reporting of inspection and cleaning back to the city to ensure that they are being cleaned out or at least inspected. So what I presented here is a process for doing that in the city of Litchfield Park. So what this requires is, an initial inspection and cleaning, depending on when the facility was first put into operation. And then on a 5-year basis after that. These facilities tend not to fill up with a lot of silt because they're commercial areas and, mostly the silt's coming off the parking lot and so on. So they don't get a lot of mud in them. So I decided that 5 years would probably be a good interval for cleanings. But the main point of this city code amendment is to require reporting back to the city that this is being done, and it's being done by a qualified contractor. That's all I have, Mayor.
Question, how does our city center storm drain system going to come in under this ordinance?
Yeah,
City report itself, basically.
Yeah, that's the city center has an underground stormwater collection system, as you saw. So we will, hew to our own ordinance and, inspect it and clean it out on a regular basis.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council?
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
But I can understand looking at the underground retention, which is easy to access, pull off a manhole cover. There's a ladder there, you crawl down in it with a light. But how do you clean a drywall? And that's a 20-foot hole full of rocks.
Yeah, what happens with a dry well is that they do have sediment chambers. So basically you're cleaning out the sediment chamber, but you're also inspecting the drywall itself to make sure that it hasn't silted up. And they do that with Vector trucks. So they back a Vector truck into it and suck all the mud and debris out with the truck.
Out of the top of it. You're not going to get down in those rocks.
Right. Yeah. There's rock way down on the bottom, but the silt collects on top of the rock. So, it's just a matter of sucking out the silt and mud.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this ordinance? If not, is there a motion to introduce ordinance 22-255 to amend city code concerning flood damage prevention related to underground storage systems? Moved by Councilman Brainerd Watson, seconded by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor- Excuse me, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion is introduced.
Nay.
Motion is adopted. Item is introduced. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you were a nay?
Correct.
Okay, so that motion is carried by a vote of 6-1. Next item is adoption of a resolution concerning Camelback Road annexation number 22-508. Mr. Scout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it was at your last meeting, I'm sorry, October meeting. You entertained this IGA and the concept of annexing Camelback Road from the Goodyear city limits to El Mirage Road. The direction from the council was to go back and renegotiate that to just the limits just to 127th Avenue and keep the amount of money from the county the same. We have done that. This IGA has been revised to reflect those changes and has been signed by the county, and it's been approved by the County Board of Supervisors. So we are recommending approval of resolution 22-508.
Questions from council? Is there a motion to adopt resolution 22-508 concerning Camelback Road annexation? Moved by, I think, Councilman Brainerd Watson. Yes? Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is adopted on 22-508. Next item is the fiscal 22 pavement maintenance program. Mr. Scouten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is for the FY22 pavement maintenance and involves the more routine maintenance of crack seal, surface seal, and micro seal. I have also included in here about $97,000 for a mill and overlay of portions of Fairway Drive and a portion of Florence Avenue. However, I failed to put that in my staff report, so I'm explaining it to you now that this does include mill and overlay of Fairway Drive between Villanueva and Villanueva and Florence Drive between Wigwam Boulevard and Fairway Drive. The other thing on this project is that this is the first proposal I've gotten from Sunland, who acquired Ace Asphalt, and they did not include money for their bonds, the payment and performance bonds. I missed that. So if council chooses to move ahead with this project, I would like you to approve a new total, which includes the cost for them to provide bonds, which is $303,635.92, not to exceed that amount.
Can you tell us again where this mill and overlay is going? What Fairway Drive?
Yeah, sure.
Where and where?
I can show you an exhibit if the clerk will let me share my screen.
You can share your screen, Wayne.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so the two projects that are included in this project that you're considering right now is a portion of Fairway Drive here between Villanueva and Villanueva, and Florence Avenue between Fairway Drive and Wigwam Boulevard. And the project is to what we call edge mill, which is to mill along the curb and gutter, existing curb and gutter for about 6 feet into the center of the street, and then overlay the entire street with 1.5 inches of new asphalt. And the reason we do that is because the street is structurally sound, but the surface of the pavement is in poor shape. So this gives us, it utilizes the existing structural strength of the pavement. It gives us a brand new surface, and it's cheaper than replacing all of the pavement.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to see where it was in relationship to the flood control project we have going on the same street.
And if you don't mind, Mayor, while I have this up on the screen, I'll real quickly show you the other mill and pave projects. The Vista Verde that I'll be coming back to you with, the Vista Verde circles on the south side of Acacia, and then also the streets within the Casalinda condominiums, Inca, Maya, and Tainter, will be replacing all of the pavement in those. And as I said, I'll be bringing that project to you here shortly.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions from council? Councilman Brainer Watson. You got to unmute, Councilman.
Sorry, computer wasn't letting me do it. A quick question, does this come into play at all with the retention projects, and do we have them timed? If so, are they being timed out so that we won't be cutting into new asphalt or new overlay?
Yes, if you're talking about the Vista Verde area, yes, we're phasing that project very carefully so that we don't have two contractors working in there at the same time or interfering with each other. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the contract with Sunline Asphalt for the amended amount provided by the city engineer in the meeting? Moved by Councilman Romack, seconded by Councilman Lisa Brainerd Watson. Is that a question or a second, or both? Okay. So are there any further comments from council? If not, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, motion is adopted. We will award the contract for the maintenance work. Next item is concrete and pavement repair for Luna Drive South. Mr. Scouten.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a replacement of about 140 feet of curb and gutter, sidewalk, and pavement on Luna Drive South because the existing curb and gutter is holding water, at least 2 inches of water. And that's enough water so that after about 36 hours, it can start to grow mosquitoes. So we need to fix this. Plus the homeowner who has this water standing in front of his driveway has complained about this and has asked the city to correct it. I'm not sure how it got into this condition. It may be a combination of some issues with original construction. It may be some subsidence of some of the curb over time. These streets were built in 2007. It may also be some tree roots. And when we strip that curb and gutter out of there, we're going to do some investigation to try to figure out what caused this so it won't happen again. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is make this curb and gutter drain so that we don't have standing water in front of this resident's house.
Any questions from council?
And Mayor, I'm sorry, I also meant to say that I did not include the bonds, the cost of the bonds in this project either. So the new amount is $57,691.57.
Yeah, I just made that assumption.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to award a cooperative purchase contract with Sunline Asphalt in the amount provided by the city engineer this evening for concrete and pavement repair at Luna Drive South. Moved by Councilman Donahue, seconded by Councilman Romack. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is approval of the 2022 Major General Plan Amendment Schedule. This is Mr. Sanks.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. It's great to see everybody. Just a brief presentation tonight, if you will, on the 2022 Major General Plan Amendment Schedule. As you know, this item is typically brought before you in the beginning of the calendar year for adoption annually. So the proposed schedule, if you see in your packets, follows the almost nearly identical to last year's or this current one, just this last year's schedule with dates adjusted to correspond with regularly following council meeting dates. If you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. But the gist of it is that the applications need to be in prior to June 1st. After June 1st, we kick up our staff review, and then we would conduct 60-day formal review by partner agencies starting on July 12th. The intention is to bring the item for a council hearing as required to be by state statute, the calendar year in which it's filed. So we have some tentative dates listed there, and that's to give us some flexibility in the event that the general plan amendments need to carry to the next date. For example, P&Z is listed as September 13th or October 11th. It really just depends on where we're at that time period this year. It gives us some room to at least have November 16th as an optional first council hearing date. And then if we need to push to December 21st, we can do that as well. Further in your report, I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that the 2022 general plan rewrite was at least acknowledged, since I imagined it would come up in conversation when you're getting a general plan amendment schedule. This is on a separate track that's related to our typical 10-year rewrite or refresh of our general plan, which needs to be adopted by the voters. You may recall a couple of years ago, we found a 6-month gap in the processing, approval, and the ability for our voters to adopt the general plan within our within the timeframes that were permitted. And so what we did is we had council re-adopt the existing general plan to buy us some time. So it was determined, I spoke with Matthew, that we should go ahead and make our best effort to get this re-adopted by the voters this year and get back on schedule. And we believe that through the use of in-person meetings, Zoom and hybrid, that we can accomplish the type of citizen review necessary to get this in front of the voters, get this to the public, solicit input from yourselves, P&Z, partner agencies, et cetera, so that we can get a robust and complete document to you by as quick as April at the latest, and then to the voters for the August 2nd election cycle. I'm happy to answer some questions on it. It's really just a presentation item, not really listed as a big discussion item, but if you have any burning questions, please let me know. Also, if you have any input at this early stage through the 60-day review cycle, please do forward any comments or input directly to Daniel. You're welcome to copy me so that I can begin to rope those sorts of comments, suggestions, etc. into the document as we advance towards citizen review next month, study sessions, and ultimately hearings for council adoption, the latest again by April, so that we can make the cycle for the election in August. But I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions are in order, but only on the issue of the general plan amendment schedule that was provided, not on the issue of consideration of adopting a new general plan for the city, because it's not agendized at all. Are there any comments or discussion on the general plan amendment schedule proposed? If not, is there a motion to approve the 2022 major general plan amendment schedule? Moved by Councilman Clare, seconded by Councilman Romack. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is adopted. Next item is a recreation center ball courts. Mr. Williams.
Mayor and council, this is something we've talked about previously. It's a request to make the rec courts more available to the public, particularly the basketball courts. As you know, those courts are currently pay to play during rec business hours. Councilmember Donahue has brought this issue up several times and asked that we place this on the agenda for possible referral to RPG. That's basically what this item would do if council decides to move forward with it, is would move this to RPG for further discussion. RPG has looked at this item before. There was some concerns there with cameras. Staff have discussed this, and just a few thoughts on this. To make the basketball courts available during rec business hours, that's important. That way there is definitely rec staff there. It would only be for the basketball courts, and also they would be subject to reservation. So they'd be available for free play when they weren't being reserved. Obviously, if there were people there doing free play and people showed up with a reservation, the reservation would come first. Same thing with sports leagues. Sports leagues would obviously have first access. But other than that, they would be open to free play during rec business hours. Again, of course, if that's what RPG wanted to do. So that'd be mainly what we'd be looking at doing. Councilman Donahue, would you like to comment your thoughts on this?
I would. So I was sort of back, the history of this is, I honestly swear I found or refound the basketball court at Scout Park after it was in disarray. The Wigwam owned it. I used to coach in this league, and so I got the Wigwam to bring in nets and put in trash cans. Anyway, that went away. Then when all of the surveys went out to all of the citizens a number of times, I know that basketball courts were in the top 5 for Scout Park. So that's been delayed. Scout Hut's going to maybe move over there. It sounds like Scout Park will not be the site of a basketball court. And in the meantime, now that I'm coming north and I never take Litchfield Road and I drive by the rec center 10 times a day, the courts appear to never be used with the exception of evenings, possibly during basketball season, including the holidays. And what motivated me was over the holidays, I got 2 calls from citizens. One was a grandparent who had his 3 grandsons with him, went down to think, oh, let's go shoot some hoops. And not only was it locked, it was bolted locked, and that was not available. And the other history here is I was very closely involved in the Facebook contest with LeBron James and Sprite Foundation that remodeled those. I was in charge of Facebook at the elementary school. We got lots of those votes. I promise you that I doubt we would have been awarded that had they known it was going to be a pay to play. Kids just won't pay to play. Middle school kids in particular that, would like to, they're not going to pay to play. And I get that. The school courts used to be available. They aren't anymore because it's locked. So we've lost all those opportunities. And yes, we have Aleppo Park, but I don't think our kids should have to, run over there when we have a basketball court right here. So my other hope is, besides cameras, it's right smack in the middle of our town. Our Avondale Police Department drives by there all the time. I mean, A, it'd be open during hours. B, it's right smack in the middle of our town. And I think it'd be awesome to see kids playing on that basketball court. So that's my motivation, is that free court. Well, and obviously if I want to reserve it for my kids to practice, then I reserve it. You put a sheet outside, it says it's reserved. If kids are playing on it, now they're moved off because I've reserved it, meaning I've paid for it. So that was my motivation. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell. So anyway, that's where it came from.
All right, is there anyone on council that wants to speak against this idea? Hearing none, are there any positive comments?
Tricia, would you like to add anything on this?
Really, I would just defer to council's judgment. If they want RPG to revisit this issue, then the rec staff is happy to work with RPG to take a look at the feasibility of opening it to the youth. I think that's what Councilwoman Donahue is suggesting, is we make this available for free to youth. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if we did something like that, we probably would have a check-in procedure where the children would have to come in and show their school IDs, and we would work through that process. But again, if it's a recommendation of council to make that happen. At this point, the rec center has not had any frequent questions or complaints about the availability of the courts. Whether that's going directly to council members, I guess that's a different story.
Well, and I will also add a little bit. So my son Jack used to teach at Western Sky, and he has a basketball business now. And it was him seeing some of his students a couple of years ago walking around with balls, and they're like, where can we play? You know, and I don't think he said, well, jump the fence over here at the school. There's all sorts of courts. But he initially came to me about this, and I said, you take care of it. I'm not the community activist. I'm going to teach you how to do this. So he actually went to RPG and he spoke to them and so forth. Anyway, and so now coming full circle back around, because I drive by it all the time, I've talked to some of the RPG as well. And so they're willing to, I think they're going to put it on their agenda next month. So that's where we are.
So do we actually need to refer this to RPG or just let them deal with it?
I think it would be nice to refer it to RPG, sir, because they have discussed it before. So it would be nice to have a council request to do it.
Is there a motion to refer this question concerning the basketball courts to RPG for consideration?
So moved.
Back.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Donahue, seconded by Councilman Rostosi, who had his hand up first. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we have one item of business left, which is a consideration of a contract with JLL. Before we take up that item, which is item 9B, we have provision for an executive session, which I think we do desire to have, so we can have some conversation with our attorney and our city manager. So is there a motion to go into executive session under item 10A? Moved by Councilman Clare, seconded by Councilman Romack. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, the council is now in executive session, so we'll be taking all of the public out of the meeting and any non-essential staff. Just to let everybody know, once we get finished with our executive session, then we're going to be coming back into an open session to consider the last item of business, which was the contract with JLL. So we will be back in some period of time once we finish this executive session. B, approval of a contract with Jones Lang LaSalle. We have a contract that was presented to us by JLL. We are now going to make a motion. We're going to ask if there's a motion to approve that contract with 3 specific changes to it. First change is that there needs to be a termination for cause clause added to the contract that ties into the milestones on the $125,000 payments, fixed payments that are provided for in the contract. Those milestones will need to be converted to date certains with notice provisions and reasonable cure provisions added so that there's a standard type of termination process that will be negotiated between staff and JLL. Second change is that we need to correct the parcel numbers that are in the contract, make sure that the parcel numbers are what we really intend to have sold through JLL. As I understand, there's at least one parcel number that needs to be modified. And the third point is there needs to be a reduction of any commissions payable if it's a reduction of 20% of any commissions payable if it's related to any of the parties that we've already brought to the table, including the hearth parties. So with those 3 changes to the contract as presented by JLL, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Question.
Okay, let me finish with the motion, and then we'll have a question. So it's been moved by Councilman Rostosi. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Lisa Brainerd Watson. Now a question by Councilman Romack.
Yeah, you're mentioning hearth. I thought that on the hearth group that there is no, huh?
All 4 groups, hearth plus the other 3.
Oh, okay, I thought hearth was not, there was no commission to be paid.
Well,
And the other 3, there is a discounted commission.
It's for a second parcel. So if hearth comes in and wants a second parcel.
Oh, okay. All right, gotcha.
So there's no commission on the initial parcel. But if he comes back for a second one, which they have at least broached that subject, then they would come in at 20% reduction.
Okay, I didn't get the second parcel. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion by council? Anybody on council want to say anything to the JLL representatives that are here? Brian, I know you're here. I can see you. Well, I guess there's both Brians here.
Yeah, we just
we're
got
both
back on, so we missed the last few minutes. We literally just signed off a few minutes ago because we weren't sure if you needed us to be on the call.
We have gone through and discussed this in great detail in executive session and gotten advice from our staff and from our city attorney, and have 3 specific changes that we're directing the staff to work out with you so that we can get this to move forward. Do you understand those changes, at least in general? Because our staff understands them specifically and they can explain that to you if you don't.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully we'll be able to get over this hurdle and get this thing moving. I think that if there's a general consensus within council is that it's time to, it's time to get this thing off the ground. So hopefully we'll be able to get this concluded with you guys quickly. And with that, if council has no further questions, then I'm going to call the question. All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. All right, motion carries. Staff will be in touch with you guys, shortly, and we'll try to get this documentation finished up so we can get it moving along. All right.
Sounds great.
Okay, it's been a long night. I appreciate all the efforts on all the council. It's been, we've gone through a lot of significant discussions, and I appreciate all of the attention and time everyone has put in. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second? Yes, moved by
Second.
Councilman Womack, seconded by Councilman Stossy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you,
Everybody.
everyone.
Get well, Tom.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
really, I was better until I had to use my voice all night.
Sorry about that.
Good
I
night.
owe you a drink.
Good night.
You do